lights go up in London.
Pip pip, tally-ho, Joolz Guides here, in which I wander around London and tell you fascinating facts. Except today, owing to the massive success of my video about English language idioms, I thought I'd talk more about language. And I'm with Sash here. Hi, Sash. Hey, come and stand over here for a second. Just by sheer coincidence, a bit of a twin. Anyway, cheers for your help. I just came across Sash here in Bell Yard, and have you ever wondered why people say they're eating humble pie? Have you ever had to eat humble pie? The only kind of pie that Bell Yard is famous for is the ones made by Marjorie Lover, who was the lover of Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, who had his barbershop just a little bit further down the street there, and he used to chop up his victims, and his girlfriend Marjorie Lovett would serve them up in a beautiful pie here in Bell Yard. But in America, if you're very embarrassed, having been proven wrong in an argument or something, you have to climb down and be very humiliated. You'll say, oh, I had to eat crow, or I had to eat boiled crow. I wouldn't mind bloody eating that crow over there, it's getting on my nerves. Here we eat humble pie, but it's actually not a humble pie. It's actually from an old style of pie you used to have in the old days called an humble pie. Humble comes from the French word humble or something like that, which means a deer's innards. And so in English we call it humbles. And you would be able, as not a particularly delightful dish, have a pie made from giblets of deers and other animals like the liver, the kidneys, the heart and other offal. And humble became humble. It's called meta-analysis. It happens with other words as well, like an apron was originally, the word was napron. So you'd wear a napron, but after many years it became an apron. And the same with an orange, which is originally from the Spanish naranja. Instead of saying a norange or a naranja, they would say an orange. Who cares? Not me. Samuel Pepys, on the other hand, actually quite liked humble pies. He said in his famous diary in 1666, Mrs. Turner came in and did bring us an humble pie, hot out of her oven. Extraordinarily good. Sounds disgusting to me.
As I've never been before, you will find me on the tiles.
Half a pound of tuppenny rice, half a pound of treacle, that's the way the money goes, pop goes the weasel. No, I haven't gone completely mad. I know I'm standing here in City Road in Old Street singing Pop Goes the Weasel. We love our nursery rhymes here, and a lot of them have these spurious explanations actually. The one that I like the best about Pop Goes the Weasel comes from this pub here. Back in about 1850, Pop Goes the Weasel, which was a popular nursery rhyme, then became a popular dance, which they used to do here at what was then a music hall. Up and down the city road, in and out the eagle, that's the way the money goes, pop goes the weasel. But what does pop goes the weasel actually mean? Well, it's kind of derived from rhyming slang, because pop is another expression in the old days for pawning something. And when I say pawn, I don't mean sitting in your room with the curtains drawn with hairy palms and a box of Kleenex and a good internet connection. I mean pawn as in when you see 3 golden dangly balls, that shop is a pawnbroker, a place where you can secure a loan on, say, a coat or an umbrella or a diamond ring or something. The weasel is actually from rhyming slang, a weasel and stoat meaning coat. So pop goes the weasel means that somebody might go and pawn their coat, their weasel and stoat coat, for a bit of money so they could go out down the eagle. At the beginning of Only Fools and Horses, you might be familiar with this song that goes, stick a pony in your pocket, fetch a suitcase from the van. So a pony is £25 because the 25 rupee note in India used to have a picture of a pony on it, and so when the soldiers came back from India they'd refer to it as a pony. 500 rupee note used to have a monkey on it, and that's why a monkey is £500. Every night when I go out, a monkey's on the table, take a stick and knock it off, pop goes a weasel. That means every night when I go out, a monkey's on the table, meaning £500 is owed by me to somebody. Take a stick, as in sticks and stones, loans. Take a stick, knock it off, take a loan, pay it off. Pop goes the weasel. Now I've got to go and pawn my coat in order to pay for this loan. Those Cockney rhyme slang ain't half complicated. I'm going to go down the rubber-dub-dub.
Gonna get so lit up, I'll be visible for miles. city will sit.
Now, we in England like to confuse people, especially foreigners, with our words and expressions. Take, for example, the word bollocks. Bollocks can have many different meanings. It can either mean something's a load of old rubbish, what a load of bollocks, or testicles, or it can also mean that is something really good, in the case of that being the dog's bollocks. So if something's the dog's bollocks, yeah, it means, well, that's brilliant. Like, for example, if you had a hamburger and you say, well, that's the best hamburger I've ever had, that was the dog's bollocks. Be careful, by the way, if you happen to be in some parts of the world, because you might literally have eaten the dog's bollocks, but not in England, hopefully. When the Sex Pistols released their album Nevermind the Bollocks, they were taken to court for causing offence. And their solicitor argued that bollocks actually was an Old English word for priests. So, I know, take your pick, really. But why, I hear you cry, am I standing in the middle of a very busy thoroughfare, Regent Street, in London, outside Hamley's toy shop, the biggest toy shop in London and possibly the world, with 6 floors of toys, or is it 7? 7 floors of toys. I used to work there, I should know. There are many different stories about where words come from, and one of my favourite ones is that when they started making these construction sets for kids, like Meccano and Lego, in shops like Hamley's, they would have the smaller version, the box standard, and then you'd have the bigger, more deluxe version. That would be the box deluxe. So the box standard, otherwise known as bog standard, meaning, oh, that's a bog standard burger, something you might just get in a very cheap place, or it would be the box deluxe, which became known as the dog's bollocks. Box deluxe, dog's bollocks. I don't know. It might be true. Or it might just be a load of bollocks.
The lights go up in London, we'll all be lit up as the Strand was only more, much more. And before...
Now, when I was at school, I was always being told that it's easier for a rich man to hump a camel than to... It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And this was a quotation from the Bible. But I always thought to myself, well, that sounds a little bit odd, doesn't it? Because is what Jesus is saying, it's actually impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Because where does that leave my friend and croquet partner, Worthington Carruthers III? He was pretty rich. He was a rather nice fellow, I thought. Now, it could be from a mistranslation of the Greek, where kamelos, which means camel, sounds very similar to kamelos, which means rope. And so what he could have been saying in the original Aramaic, in which I believe the 2 words are actually the same, is that it's easier to pass a piece of rope through an eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And actually, some ropes would have been made out of camel's hair. But I've also heard that Needle's Eye was the name given to a small city gate. But if a wealthy merchant arrived back at the city gates and it was closed after hours, then he'd have to go round to the smaller Needle's Eye gate, where he would have to spend a lot of time removing his possessions from the camel. The Needle's Eye gate was much smaller, and they could only just squeeze a camel through if it was unburdened. So therefore, what Jesus might have been saying is that it is possible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, but he might just have to jump through some hoops first.
And before the party's played out, they will fetch the fire brigade out to the latest uppest scene you ever saw.
There's a breathless hush in the close tonight, 10 to make and a match to win. A bumping pitch and a blinding light, an hour to play and the last man in. But it's not for the sake of a ribboned coat or the selfish hope of a season's fame, but his captain's hand on his shoulder smote. Play up, and play the game. Ah, cricket, the crack of leather on willow, the faint ripple of applause, wafting across a country meadow, cucumber sandwiches, the smell of tobacco coming from gentlemen's pipes mixed with tweed, and the faint aroma of urine wafting out of the pavilion. A very gentlemanly game, and many expressions in English come from cricket, actually. In fact, you would even say that's not cricket if you're accusing somebody of ungentlemanly conduct. If you've seen one of my favourite James Bond films, where Roger Moore has been caught in flagrante with his female co-star, MI6 appearing at him, they're saying, 007, what are you doing? And he says, oh, just keeping the British end up. Now, keeping up your end doesn't necessarily mean maintaining a flow of blood to your nether regions. It actually means keeping your end of a bargain. For example, if you're embarked on some joint enterprise, like I have given you some money in order for you to carry out some work in my house. Well, I've given you my part of the deal. You need to carry on your part of the deal by fixing my bloody bathroom. So in cricket, you have a player at each end of the pitch, and towards the end of the innings, you may have the last two batsmen in. And in order to win the game, the fielding team has to get out the final player. In that scenario, you want to make sure that you keep up your end. You make sure that he doesn't get you out at your end, and you say to the other guy, keep your end up.
Oh,
yeah. What does that mean then when you're batting above your average?
You're not two good-looking blokes like us, then you actually got really good-looking Sheilas.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah. So having a good-looking girlfriend, Sheila is. I mean, there's a lot of foreigners trying to understand English. Yeah. Sheila is a girl in Australia, and if you're batting above your average, you're a guy basically who's not very good-looking, but you've got a better-looking girlfriend.
Better looking than you, mate.
Yeah, way better looking.
Sing like anything, any sort of song they choose. Let the people sing, let the world.
Here I am in Wapping, by the river, one of my favourite places in London to come for a pint of beer. Now, over there you've got the Captain Kidd pub. Captain Kidd, famous pirate who ended up in a gibbet just along the way here. And down that way is the Town of Ramsgate pub, one of my favourites, because that's where Captain Bligh and Fletcher Christian had their last pint before heading off to Tahiti and the famous Mutiny on the Bounty incident. Did you ever wonder, though, when you raise your glass and you say cheers to someone, in England we say bottoms up? Well, that is because in the old days, like we're talking 18th and 19th century, this would have been the main entrance to the port of London. So it would have been teeming with sailors and seafaring folk. If you were aged between, say, 18 and 55, and you were wandering around here falling out of a pub drunk, you'd better watch out, because you could get press ganged into joining the Navy and you couldn't do anything about it. There were, however, certain exemptions. If you were a landsman, someone who has no idea about the sea, a bit like me, or if you were a gentleman, very much like me, then you would be able to be exempt from this being press ganged into joining the Navy. But some people were a bit of a grey area, and they needed encouragement to join the Navy, and so they would be offered what's known as the King's Shilling. So someone would offer them a shilling with the King's head on it, usually, or the Queen's shilling, and if they accepted it, that meant that they would then be enlisted into the Navy. Now, the problem was that a lot of people were not accepting this, so recruiters had a cunning plan by slipping a shilling into a drunk man's beer, and after they finished their pint, the recruiter would say, aha, look, you've accepted the King's Shilling, and they would cart them off to a ship nearby, and they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Now, certain pubs around here became quite wise to this little trick by the recruiters, and they decided they'd started serving their beer in tankards with clear bottoms, so that if someone dropped a shilling into your beer, then you could check the bottom of the tankard to make sure there were no shilling in it. Therefore, patrons were encouraged to lift the bottoms up. Check the glass. Bottoms up, everyone. Cheers.
You'll find a song, welcome as the breath of spring.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and also check out all my other amazing videos all about London on YouTube. I've got plenty of them. And you can also head over to my website, joolzguys.com, where you can find out more about me, and you can even leave a donation if you like, or book a private guided tour of London, as if you wanted to. Cheers, everybody. Bottoms up.
You'll get no promotion this side of the ocean, so cheer up, my lad.